All right, we are excited to welcome to the Hive Colin Estrem. He is owner and senior recruiter at Estrem Company, and Colin is really dedicated to identifying top talent to help organizations create their own thriving hive. And so, what we do in the Hive is we assign kind of a buzzword to participants and people in the Hive. And today's Colin's buzzword is employee retention. And so, we've asked him to share with us how employee retention contributes to building a high performing organization. So, Colin, welcome. We're looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this because I know a lot of organizations care about employees and retention. And it sounds like you're the guy to help share some insight with us.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Colin, tell us employee retention. It's a topic that a lot of companies are thinking about. And you, as a recruiter and owner of Estrem Company, how do you think about employee retention? What's important to you? What's important to organizations?
Yeah, so clearly employee retention is really important to any business. We look at like the cost of a mishire for any company is just if you add up all the costs, it's super expensive. And then going and working with a recruiter or the time that it takes your team internally to source, find, hire, someone new is also very expensive. So clearly, we want to keep all of our people, and we see it at the ground level every day. We see companies that do a really good job hiring, and then they do all the right things inside that makes people stay. And we see it on their LinkedIn profiles. We see it on the resumes that we get. And it's always been something that's sort of mystical to me. It's like, what is the secret sauce? What is happening, in their offices that makes certain companies be able to hold on to their team, and other organizations, it's a revolving door. And we see it in small companies, large companies. They all could either have their strengths and disadvantages. So I was really excited when I heard what you guys were working on, to be able to hear more about what you guys thought about employee retention.
Yeah, for sure. I think what you said is so enlightening, right? There's a huge cost associated with hiring talent, a huge cost associated with losing talent. So especially when you're going out recruiting like yourself, right? Finding that right person is key, but bringing them into your organization and having them kind of align to your value system is really, really important. So, when we think about retention of employees, that's the first thing we think about organizationally is there an aligned set of values across the organization and the individual? Because that's where we see sometimes companies falter, right? Where there's an issue with the value alignment. And Katie, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, Mike, so well said. And I heard Colin talk about, you could see what people post on social media, and a lot of that is grounded in what happens on the inside. And so, Colin, I'm curious about your thoughts in terms of the work environment or the culture to help like kind of retain talent.
So the best example I have with this is a client that we started working with in the past year. And they have a really strong human resources leader that seems to guide people from the initial meeting to the offer and then beyond that. And she's using assessments and tools like that to help out. And then it seems like she has some sort of like an overarching connection with the leadership team, and that just seems to dribble down. We have another company that's a very similar size, and we see like the exact opposite situation, which is lots of turnover. And to something that Mike said, like I could probably tell you what the value system was of the first company that I referenced, but I could not tell you what the value system is for the second company.
So, Colin, you bring up an important topic that Mike and I talk a lot about, right? As much as we want people to learn, in many ways, we want people to unlearn too. So, as we're embracing growth mindset, we might look back on what our experiences have encouraged us to think about leadership or to think about how we create a culture. But when we're really kind of putting our ear to the ground now, and we're looking at dollars and cents, right? High returns on our investments. In a lot of those ways, we have to learn new ways. And so for people that have bad habits, or as you mentioned, they might not even have the awareness that they need to do this, right? This is the space that we invest in that leadership development to say, oh, well, these are kind of simple, right? Things that we can do to encourage the conversation, but that we're pulling our people in instead of, and in many ways, this is unintentional, right? That we end up pushing people away and then we're scratching our head saying, why is this happening? Right.
Yeah,
But a lot
absolutely.
of them are small changes.
Yeah, I think having a value system and trusting your employees would be top of my list because
Thanks,
Thanks,
Colin. Really
Colin.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for being with us.
Well, that was awesome to have Colin in the Hive today, Katie. Thanks for the time with him, and I think thanks for all the great questions. It was a great dialogue. As we think about the conversation with Colin and kind of the information he imparted on to listeners, what's one of the B mindsets that maybe you were thinking about that companies should be thinking about as they go out and pollinate others?
Yeah, Mike, there were several. Um, he really made me think about, that we need to be intentional. And so he talked a lot about, returns on investment. And so when we think about employee retention, or even as we're bringing top talent in, we have to be intentional in that investment, right? He mentioned value alignment, right? Lots of other things as we think about culture, trust building, but we have to be intentional of who we're bringing in and then the environment that we create to make sure that we're helping individuals and groups to be successful. How about you? What were you thinking about?
Yeah, just building on that, he mentioned the word exit interview, and I think that's a really important thing to think about. So I was thinking about listening, but being inquisitive. Like when employees are in our organization for a long time and they value our culture, like I think it's important to ask why and what they love about working here, what they love about the company, because really they can help inform some of those, values and say, here's why I like to be here. But at the same token, if you have people leaving or experiencing attrition, and people are saying that they don't just feel like it's a good fit, you have to be inquisitive there too and find out why, because those are kind of the catalysts to making those small changes in the organization that could prevent some of that. And we heard about the cost associated with people leaving. So I think being inquisitive would be the mindset that I would embrace as a leader in an organization, to really find out the why when it comes to employees, why they stay and why they may want to leave. So
I love that. And, Mike, Colin mentioned to listeners a bit about our book, The Beekeeper, that's coming out in May. And so we just want everyone to really be primed as Mike and I are talking about, bee mindsets. That's something that we really encourage and prime in the book. And so if you're curious about those bee mindsets, you can pre-order your copy of The Beekeeper. But we look forward to having more conversations like this. We hope that you tune in to the Hive again for our next visitor to hear more about how we can pollinate others together. Thanks for being with
bye,
us.
everyone. Thank you.